A pleasant good morning to everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Carlos Brown Show right here on the Black College Sports Network. Yours truly, Carlos Brown, as you can see, joining us, Wheeler Brown. We affectionately call him the hardline director of athletics, and the legend himself, Coach Vann Pettaway. And I really want to start the show saying that Charles is not going to join us today. Is there any rumor to a contract dispute with Charles? No, it's not. No, it's not. He's busy, but between Charles Wheeler and Coach Vann Pettaway, doing this show and getting the relationships and getting to know these guys has been truly, truly an honor. Now, I've got a big announcement coming up, but it's nothing bad. It'll be later on in the show. All right, Pat Riley, leave me alone, okay? Yeah, it's kind of probably according to that, but no, it'll be good. Pulling it up here, today's show. Here's simply what's trending. But before what's trending, our special guest will be Rodney Kirschner. He's a Deputy Associate AD for Southern University. First time coming on the show, so we look forward to talking with him and see where the state of Southern University Athletic Department is and where it's going. Because Wheeler, we talked during the week, man. It's you guys have a tough job, and it's not only going to take the administration, both athletic administration and the university, and the alums. It's going to take all of us together to kind of keep things going, because HBCUs are under attack, both from an academic standpoint, from a financial standpoint. So we must assure that they're, again, viable, not only 500 years from now, but 1,000 years from now. Because they have had a mission, and they still have a mission. So I'll leave it at that point. But now here's what's trending. Southern University baseball down 2-0 in the final regular season. No, I'm not on the edge, Wheeler. I'm not Coach Pettaway. Come on. We'll talk about that. We'll give us some information. Today is the last day of the regular season for Southern and for the majority of the HBCUs and in the SWAC. Also, Jackson State, 2025 SWAC Softball Tournament champions. Now, last week, we had a kind of a split screen, and we kind of saw the walk-off home run by FAMU to get into the finals. And JSU had to lose twice. They only lost once, and they are the champions. Congratulations to Jackson State. HBCU football guarantee games. Show me the money. Will, I hope we don't get into it too much disagreement on these games. We know the feeling. We know they are needed. But I'm just going to ask one thing, like I said in the text messages. Do we have a plan if suddenly these games went away? Now, that's hypothetically. Hold your thought. There's still the group of 5 games.
All right.
But everybody think about that, Coach Pettaway. I think me and Coach Pettaway might be on the same side on this. We shall see. But it's no wrong or right, just opinions. And then the NBA playoffs 2025 update. One number one seed is down in the East.
Yep.
A number two seed is down. I gotta ask the question: is the number one seed in the Western Conference? Could they be down? Could they be gone fishing? I don't think so. But a big game tonight: Denver and OKC. And Coach Pettaway, we talked during the week. OKC is kind of giving you kind of a headache.
Right. They show their youth a lot down the stretch. This never should have gone to a seventh game if if on the court they had just taken care of business, and by that I mean just clock management. Just a clock management thing. Uh, had they done the right thing, Denver would not have had an opportunity to score some of the late baskets because the game would have been short. And they didn't do that. So I think a lot of that has to do with you because as a coach, you can have it drawn up on the sideline and talk about it, but they had to go out and execute it. And I just think that on several possessions, when there was an opportunity for them to milk the clock, they took early shots. I mean, when you up 4 or 5 and you taking shots with uh, 15, 16 seconds on the shot clock, that's way too early. Shorten the game. So I thought that their youth and inexperience really showed in a couple of games. Now it's down to the seventh game to where everybody's going to be tight. Every part of their body is going to be tight now. And then the fact that they're playing at home, that even magnifies it. So it doesn't look good for my two picks. I picked Boston to win it all. They already in Cancun. So I don't know how this thing's going to shape out now.
Well, we'll come back to it.
Yep.
But I picked OKC to win it all, so I could be disappointed. But we'll see. Big game Saturday night. Baseball. Now, the last series, have been Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Traditionally, that's what they do at the end of the regular season. And in another series or two, kind of that same format. But on the SWAC scoreboard from Thursday, May 15th, Alabama State over Prairie View A&M 11-0. It was UAPB over Alabama A&M 3-0. Mississippi Valley State kind of shocked Grambling State because they had been on a major losing streak. They defeated Grambling State 12-10. It was JSU over Southern University 8-7 in game one. Of course, I wasn't there, but got word that it was some controversy. Oh boy, controversy. Yeah, and I'm sure the chat room, someone will explain it. What happened? But JSU over Southern 8-7. FAMU over Alcorn State 4-3, and then TSU took the first game against Bethune-Cookman. So their winning streak went down. Then on Friday, Alabama State over Prairie View A&M 14-8. FAMU over Alcorn State 14-2. UAPB 13-7 over Alabama A&M. And
football.
Yeah. 37. Grambling State took a doubleheader from Mississippi Valley State after that first game's loss, 26-17 and 20-8. It was JSU 8-0 over Southern University game 2. So Jack State's won the series. And Bethune-Cookman comes back over Texas Southern 16-4. Now today, these teams meet again, the final games. Grambling and Valley, they're through. But Bethune-Cookman and TSU, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Alabama A&M versus UAPB, Alcorn State and FAMU and JSU. Over Southern, 1 p.m. I think somebody in the chat room was laughing about that, huh? The Southern lost 8-0. And, they had been on a nice winning streak. But earlier in the season, I said they were consistently inconsistent, right? And so this big series, which I talked about, why did that series I felt will come down to the last series, Jackson State, Southern University. Now I've been kind of going over some things with my colleague, and guess what? Southern's locked in at the 7th seed.
Right.
They're locked in at the 7th seed. Going into the season, I thought they would at least be a 5th seed. Not going to happen. But I've reached out to one of my colleagues to come on. I'm waiting to hear back from him because the formats are they have a difference in the format, particularly in the second round. So I'm not going to get on here and try to explain it when I haven't really looked at it. But guess what? I have some colleagues that have already looked at it, and so
Right.
we'll have them later on in the show.
Right. But Carlos, they still have not crowned a champion either now, because when you look at the standings, Bethune-Cookman's 23-5, FAM's 23-6, and they still got a game left today.
Well, wait a minute. You mean the regular season is important? I'm being facetious, Coach. with the tournament. Yeah. Let me.
Yeah, I'm serious. So they haven't determined a champion yet.
Right. And I'm in a couple of text message groups, and I believe here it is. A FAMU win and Bethune-Cookman University loss gives FAMU the regular season title. And this is courtesy of A.D. Drew. Number 2, seeds 3 through 6 are set. Now, in the game of the day, he says it's Bethune-Cookman and Texas Southern. So the winner of today's game wins that series. But 7th place, Southern University is penciled in. Even if they lose, and there's a good chance if they get swept, I'm not going to be happy. And let's say Texas Southern wins. Southern has the tiebreaker against Texas Southern because they swept them in the regular season. See, Willa, the regular season is important. It is important.
All games matter, Carlos. All games.
There you go. There you go, Willa. There you go. Perfect setup. So, the SWAC baseball tournament is going to be in Birmingham, historic Rickwood Field, and I think it's going to be exciting. The strong teams are there. You know who they are. Bethune-Cookman, FAMU. I put Alabama State in there playing well of late. So with that saying, oh boy, they're going at it, huh? The sweep, the brew against Southern. Come on.
Yeah, but right now, FAM is the hottest team. They've won 10 in a row.
Mm-hmm.
Going into today's game. So, they're trending in the right direction with that tournament next week. And in fact, with it being in Birmingham, I'm gonna see if I can make it down there for at least one of the days.
Mm-hmm.
Birmingham's Rickwood Field is a historic place. I would like to go. In fact, my goal is to go and take my father. In fact, shout out to my dad. Today is his 89th birthday.
Wow.
God bless.
Yep. And so I've had it in the hopper all along. He loves baseball. So I said I'd swoop down through there and get him and take him and let him watch some SWAC action.
Yeah.
I mean, Carlos, and what's
That's
Southern?
great.
8-2 in their last 10. 8-2 in their last 10 games.
Yeah.
What's up? Not bad at all.
I mean, just a little frown because of the last couple games. But I mean, you 8-2 in your last 10. Could very well possibly be 9-2. In your last 11. I mean, going into the tournament, that ain't bad.
No, and we wipe the slate clean. It's 0-0 when you get in there.
But I just think it's more of who they lost to. I think it's because they lost to Jackson.
Well taken.
Yeah. If it had been anybody else, I think you'd have been all right. But because they lost to Jackson, they're not happy. They're not happy, Will.
Well, there is some truth to that. Because JSU is a very heated rival, and I hear from them all the time. They've defeated Southern in football 6 straight, I believe. But I will remind them before then, Southern won 8 in a row.
Wow.
So that's what a rival is. It's back and forth. It's not one sided.
Right.
And I love them to death. But you know what? It's kind of like the family member that you like, but you're always so competitive against each other. Thanksgiving Day, you go out in the yard and you're playing football. You're mad, you cry if you lose, and if you win, you gloat. That's the way it is. But this baseball season and this SWAC tournament, I think it's going to be exciting. Now, if I want to give a bold statement, which I haven't been good at lately, I'm looking at Bethune-Cookman, perhaps winning it all. But FAMU's right there. FAMU's right there. And then what about Alabama State? They've been quietly, moving up. So I think it's going to be very competitive, and whoever gets off to a good start, meaning 2-0 in the first 2 games. Okay.
Yep.
Sounded depressed. Well, okay. Southern baseball coach seemed very depressed. Yeah, I mean, they try to win everything, every game. All games matter. But with that being said, I would be frustrated too if I was a baseball coach. But when the tournament starts, it's 0-0. I'm going to pick myself up and I'm going to pick the team up, and let's go get it done. As you stated, last 10 games, 8-2, and I don't want to mention that controversial first game. So coulda, woulda, shoulda, but
Yeah. Hey, Wheeler, I was very impressed. Yesterday, I went up to A&M and I watched the Arkansas Pine Bluff game, baseball game. Man, there were more Pine Bluff fans in the stands than A&M. They travel, man. I did not know that.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
And they're doing very well.
Yeah, Pine Bluff people were in attendance, man. I was very impressed.
I wouldn't have expected that.
Right.
Are we seeing the rising of Arkansas Pine Bluff's favorite sports program?
Oh, now they look good. Now the eye test, that's a good looking group of athletes now. Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, we shall see on that one. We shall see. Some notes. Congratulations to Texas Southern, the SWAC outdoor track and field men's champions, with 136 points. Kudos to Texas Southern. FAMU, congratulations, the 2025 SWAC outdoor track and field champion with 127.5 points, which was held in Baton Rouge, Louisiana at the A.W. Mumford Football Stadium and Track and Field Complex. So congratulations to them. Of course, Jackson State, congratulations to them. 2025 SWAC tournament champions. Also, Southern University has started the installation of their new field turf. And it started immediately after the track and field championship. So Coach Graves gets a new turf, Wheeler. And I think it's about 8 years old. But I think he told me they're going to keep the end zone as is. But and I specifically asked him about, I'll ask Rodney Kirschner when he comes on, some of the things that they plan on upgrading, besides that. But, I know Charles had talked about, well, the turf didn't look bad, but I'm there more than Charles, and it was time. It was time. It was you can see where it needs to be done, and but it's not it's not inexpensive doing it, Will.
Normally you try to get at least 10 years out of a turf field. if at all possible. That's pretty much normal. And hopefully you guys are going with the cork fill as opposed to the rubber. Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
that'll help heat wise. Matter of fact, it'll cut down the heat factor by 15, 20 degrees, the field heat
Mm-hmm.
factor. And so you really want that. If you're going to go at it, go all the way at it. Don't half play it.
I think you're right. We'll confirm it with Mr. Kirschner, but I know Coach Graves did tell me um, that I think that's what you're talking about. I just couldn't really remember.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he did talk about the heat and what they put
Mm-hmm.
in will be cooler.
Hey, AD need to stop, man. When you made the statement about, you said that they're not going to replace the end zone. AD Drew thinks y'all don't need to replace it anyway because y'all don't use it. Gotta say y'all don't score, Carlos. AD need to stop that, man.
That's cold. That's cold. That's cold.
That's my colleague, right? So I'm going to be nice, okay? I'm going to be nice. Good joke, AD. Good joke. Well, guess
That's
what?
hard. That's hard.
But guess what? I'm not going to say too much, but that offense has gotten some nice surprises. And that's what a surprise is. But, you can talk about it, but you got to be about it.
And
We shall see.
Let Kenneth Johnson know that was an idea of mine in terms of Javancy having senior day when he did have it. His mom was ailing, that sort of thing. And it probably was one of the best non-athletic decisions that I made. I would agree with that.
Yes, sir. Okay, let me get back to it. Everybody's texting me, oh, that's a shot that AD took, huh? Okay. All right. Blame Mark Frederick. Well, he's the offensive coordinator. He's the offensive coordinator. But I really believe it is going to be a pleasant surprise. And, those kind of statements that have been made, that's why I would show no mercy. No mercy. If you get a chance to run it up, do it. I love AD Drew, but I'll remember that. Let me put that in my archives right now. Okay. Now, with that being said, that was funny. We're gonna get ready to take a timeout in about 20 seconds. I guess I have to. Muhammad Ali was like, a jab.
Well, they hot in the chat
I got
room
hit
this morning. They hot in the chat room, Carlos.
Yep.
Yeah, I got hit with it right, but guess what? You got to come back. So on that note, we're going to take a timeout. When we come back, number 2, 3, we've taken care of that as far as our topics. Let's get into the HBCU football guarantee game. Show me the money. And I will say this. There have been some interesting chats on social media about the HBCU game day guarantees, but nobody has told me a good plan to a good answer to my question. If one day you wake up and one day you don't have those type of games, those big, huge FBS games, or even the group of 5 games, what is your plan? How do you combat that? And there's no wrong or right, but there'll be some agreement and disagreement on that. But I'll come back and tell you why I don't like these games. Oh, I've told you that before. And Willa, I told you 3 games, those type of games in 6 years. You didn't like it. But we'll come back with that. You're watching the Carlos Brown Show right here on the Black College Sports Network. We shall return.
Since 2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties. Through its programs, Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and parenting education coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and instagram.com/empowermentjax.
The human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted Kever's voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KEAVERSVOICE.com. Kever's Voice, Kever's Voice, KeversVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
Welcome back to this week's edition of the Coles Brown Show right here on the Black College Sports Network. Good morning to everyone in the chat room and good afternoon. Speaking of that cheap shot that was taken at me, there he is, A.T. Drew. He'll join us in hour number 2, and he'll give us the rundown on the SWAC 2025 baseball tournament. So that'll be good. I'll be able to question him about those meaning the SWAC baseball tournament. HBCU, some guarantee games as far as I pull it up here, versus FBS matchups. Grambling State and Ohio State. Grambling State, the opponent is Ohio State. $1 million. Wheeler. Arkansas Pine Bluff. Their opponent, Texas Tech, $575,000. Southern University, opponent, Fresno State, $550,000. And according to reports, they've been paid that money in 2 installments already. Alcorn State, opponent, Mississippi State, $475,000. Norfolk State, Rutgers opponent, $425,000. Jackson State, a short trip south. Southern Miss, $375,000. Prairie View A&M, opponent Rice, $350,000, and Alabama State, $345,000 they're getting from UAB. These games have been deemed necessary. I have been in the minority of discussion of these games. They're not going to go away, so I'm not going to hold my breath, waste energy. Willer, I said if I was an AD, and I'm not an AD, not qualified to be an AD, I would not have as many of those games. I would not have many of those games.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be over a certain time period. Thus, I'm in the minority on that. All of, or most of our ADs and their staff in the universities, they use these games to fill in holes or fill in their budget. I asked, and I remember we had a very intense discussion about a percentage of that going. I threw out 2%, 1%. Will you say that's not gonna happen? A 0.5%, not gonna happen. So again, the question is, and we have a lot of intelligent people out in the audience in those fields. You hope it doesn't happen, but if the day comes, it does. What's the backup plan?
And to be honest with you, Carlos, there is no backup plan.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate you for being
I
honest.
think a while ago, there was a time when these guarantee games were in direct competition with classics. Yeah, and I think that the guarantees, from the larger schools, pretty much outweighed the dollars that our schools were getting from the classics. The classic like the Orange Blossom Classic and Circle City Classic and all those sorts of things. And so, it's gotten to the point where the classics aren't paying in the same manner that the guarantee games are playing. And that's why people are rotating more towards the guarantees and less towards the classics. You see most of your classics now, they're inviting D2 teams, that sort of thing, because they're not paying them as much money. So if there was a backup plan, so to speak, it would be to kind of revitalize the classics.
Right.
Yeah. And try to make that more robust and try to get that to the point where you're not missing the guarantee games as much. But, for me, everything in moderation. There's no doubt about that. I wouldn't play more than one of those big guarantee games per year. If possible, I like to schedule one big guarantee and one small guarantee, against a FCS school that I could possibly beat, for 250, 275 or what have you, that sort of thing. And, try to get the big guarantee, on top of that. I think the Gramblin's game with Ohio State, that contract was signed when we were still the flavor of the month, so to speak. Wasn't all this DEI, DIE, whatever it is you want to call it, wasn't all this negativity attached to that. And so I think Grambling was able to take advantage of that with Ohio State. Therefore, you got $1 million guarantee. And, but I think those are kind of going by the wayside now. If you can get 500, 575 or what have you, try to get some expenses thrown in. I think you're doing really good. My goal would be to let the bands negotiate for themselves, make that a separate issue from the football team, so that I want to deal with just football money, not football/band money, because in the end, if I'm getting 575 and I got to travel the band and house the band and feed the band and all that sort of thing, I ain't bringing home nothing at the end of the day. The band's travel expenses are going to far outweigh what I'm gonna spend in terms of football, especially when you start talking about chartering planes and all that sort of thing. So if you want to talk about a plan, for me, it would be trying to revitalize the classic format, so to speak. And on top of that, let the bands negotiate their guarantees for themselves, so that I'm not trying to divvy up a pie that's already slim and none as it is.
Right. Now,
And
Willa,
then the last thing, excuse me, Coach Pettaway, then the
go ahead.
last thing, Carlos, at the end of the day, if the money's not there anymore for whatever reason, we're going to have to look to chop that budget somehow, somewhere. And that means everybody's going to have to take a bite, of that budget cut. And, we got to try to make it work from there.
Right. Well, Willa, I was so happy and proud to hear you say revitalize the classic, because that was my plan B. My plan B was to go back to the classics, make them bigger and better so that the paydays are better. Now, let me go back to Grambling and that $1 million. I guarantee you they're doing that because they want that Grambling band there also. So I'm thinking that's probably the reason why they got that kind of money. But because the showdown is going to be at halftime with Ohio State and their famous band versus Grambling State. So I think that's going to be big for their people. And that's part of the reason why I think they gave them that kind of money, because that's going to include the Tiger Band being there. Now, one of the games that was left off of that list, Carlos, was A&M going to Arkansas. That's Alabama A&M first game of the year is at the University of Arkansas. And now, if I'm not mistaken, Wheeler, it's either 500,000 or 600,000 for A&M to make that trip. But that game was done a long time ago, and I think that might be the reason why it's not. It wasn't on that list, Carlos. But Alabama A&M does go to the University of Arkansas for their first game, and that was not mentioned. But Willie, you're absolutely correct. If they revitalize some of the classics, then there will be some paydays out there for some of our institutions. And then the other thing is, if we want to make money, we got to do a better job of bringing people to our own campuses, increasing our gate at our home games to offset what we would be losing from these game guarantees. And in football, physically, I don't think you can play but one of those games a year. I think it would be hard fetched to play 2 games in 1 year like that because of the injury factor. I think you spread them out. You do like you say, Wheeler. Every year you go ahead and schedule you a game to help offset some of the charges, some of the budget constraints. Now the other thing is, I'm a component for money going back to that sport. In other words, if football is going out there, I think a percentage of that guarantee of the net should go back to that football program. I think what you should do, even in basketball, some of it should go back. You got to reinvest in that program that's going out there. So I think there should be, and each institution has to do it on their own. It's not going to be one blanket thing that's going to fit every institution. But I think each sport and each institution that goes out and plays the guarantee games, they should negotiate to where some of that funds is being reinvested in that program.
I would say this, Coach Pettaway, that when we talk about budgets, and if I know that my football team is going to play a major guarantee, that sort of thing, I will allow the coach to kind of add some things into the budget, that sort of thing. But it's going to be almost impossible to just set aside X amount of dollars and say that we're going to do this, that, and the other, that sort of thing. But budget-wise, I will allow coach some add-ons, whether it be something for the locker room, whether it be in basketball, TVs for whatever, or new lockers for basketball, that sort of thing. We'll be able to do some things through that means, as opposed to just saying, I'm going to set aside 10% or 1% or 5%, that sort of thing, because the money's already spent. And I'm borrowing against the budget from the institution because come July 1, I ain't got no money at all. And I'm getting my budget from the university. So Carlos, I'm playing with house money from the start. Now, that money from that guaranteed football game from Ohio State or what have you probably won't arrive till November or so, maybe December or somewhere around there. I've already spent that money. That money has been spent and spread out here and there. It becomes already a part of the budget. So, for me to say that I'm gonna wait until the check comes and set aside X, Y, Z, that sort of thing, is pretty much almost impossible. And then the last thing, Carlos, these coaches know when they take these jobs what the deal is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I've never heard a coach complain in an interview process about playing guarantee games. You know why that is? Because they want that job. But then afterwards, after it's all said and done and they're in the position, now we want to piss them on about having to do this, having to do that, that sort of thing. So my thing is, and I tell all these young coaches, when you go in and talk about these jobs, that sort of thing, put it out there on the table. Put it on the table. Let your feelings be known up front. So you're not doing things on the back end, and there may be nothing you can do about it. And maybe the safe thing is if that you want that job, not to say anything about it. But if you don't say anything about it on the front end, you damn sure better not say anything about it on the back end, because you're going to know in the interview process, Coach Pettaway, you're going to have to play maybe 3 or 4 or 5 maybe guarantee games out of your non-conference schedule, that sort of thing. We'll, schedule the other games in a manner in which, you got an opportunity to win and the kids be able to experience some success prior to going into your conference season, that sort of thing. And, we will explain all these things up front. And Carlos, if you have an issue with that, you can make your feelings known right now.
Right. But Will, as an AD, if you told me that I only needed to play 3 or 4, I would be in agreement with that. But don't let me get there. Then now it's all of a sudden it's 9 games that you want me to play. See that? If
that was the case, Coach Pettaway, I would be letting you know in advance. Look, enrollment numbers aren't what they supposed to be or going to be, that sort of thing. Instead of 4, I might need for you to play 7 now. I understand the ramifications behind that. Look, this is what I'll do for you, because you're sacrificing, for the good of the department. Let me add another year to your contract.
Right. Now that's fair.
You see what I'm saying? It'll be some give and take.
One year.
It's going to be a thing of, I'm just going to pile all this on you and tell you, look, take it or leave it or what have you, that sort of thing. We'll try to work something out if that's going to be the case.
Try. Wait a minute, Willa. One extra year in 7 games, Willa, I think I'd have to come back with a counter offer.
Yep. And I'm
doing that.
You can do that.
Yep.
Not saying that it's gonna fly, but more than happy to banner back and forth or what have you. More than happy to do that.
Well, I appreciate that, Willa, because
at the end of the day, we're going to have to do what we need to do in order to make the entire department functional.
Mm-hmm. Well, I still, and again, I know I'm in the minority. I just wouldn't have. I'd have to go work my behind off, and me and my staff to try to come up with something. Maybe in moderation, in the middle of both our ideals, because one big one, then a group of 5, they're not going to pay as much as that that big FBS contract. Like I use, for example, Southern got $700 50,000. They got 700,000 for the game and extras, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Extra $50,000. And so that's what you're looking at. The FBS games are probably eventually going to the big ones we're talking about, those huge games. They're probably gonna go away one every 5 years or something like that. But the group of fives, and I've seen some people in the chat room saying, they're more in line with that. But you're gonna cut about $300,000 or $400,000 out of that, because
and chances are, Carlos, as it pertains to basketball, I'm going to give Coach Pettaway a number he probably needs to bring in, and
I'm
then
sure
Coach,
you would.
you figure it out. However you want to do it. If you can get it done in 4 games, then fine. If it's going to take you 5, then fine. Then you do whatever you want to do with the remainder of the non-conference schedule. So I'm gonna give you that autonomy to be able to do that. Because you are closer to the numbers than I am, because you're a basketball guy. You know what guys are paying and, all that sort of thing. You probably have some connections here and there to be able to squeeze a few more dollars here and there out of a particular school, that sort of thing. So I'm going to give you the autonomy and say, look, Coach, I need 500,000. You go back, you look at the schedule. If you can do it in 5 games, and that'll give you another 6 to play with, and do whatever it is that you want to do with that in terms of getting your team ready to play. And then we keep it moving from there.
Well, wow, Willa, you're coming down. You're not as smart, line on something. Because you just said 5, and Coach Pettaway, I look at some non-conference games in basketball. They're playing 10. They're playing 8.
Some are.
They're playing
got schools probably like Valley or maybe a couple of other schools, whose budgets are really, really dependent upon, those guarantees. But what hurts them, Carlos, and what hurts schools like them is if they don't have the requisite number of football scholarships to be able to play the big guarantees in football. So now all that onus shifts over to basketball. But if you gave out the requisite number of scholarships to be able to qualify for a guarantee, from a football school, that would be that much less that maybe your basketball team would have to play in terms of guarantees. So everybody got a bite. Everybody got to take a bite of the apple.
Yep, but Will, the thing that a lot of people are saying though, if the coaches are doing that, what are the ADs doing to raise money?
And they, I hear that also, Coach Pettaway, and the ADs are out there trying to raise money the best they can, that sort of thing. But, as you look over the entire budget, everybody is doing a part. Everybody's playing a part in that process. Now I don't know a whole bunch of ADs that's going to go out there and raise $1.5 million. But if you got revenue sports, the key word being revenue sports, your goal as an athletic director is to try to maximize those revenue sports as much as possible. So you want to try to use every avenue necessary that may be available to you. You want to have good institutional advancement people out there beating the pavement for you, that sort of thing. I've always been a proponent, Coach Pettaway, that if you hire your ADs that's in charge of institutional advancement for athletics, you pay them a minimum salary of maybe like $50,000, and then they get a percentage of what they bring in after $200,000. Or after $250,000. I'll give them 5% of what they bring in after that. Once they've tripled their salary, I give them 5% of what they bring in after that. And then that way, you got them out there hustling. They're out there, beating the pavement, beating the bushes, that sort of thing. So, you want to make sure that you are spreading that responsibility around as much as possible. We talk about it being the onus being on the football coach or the basketball coach, but really it's on everybody all the way around. We have to try to find creative ways in order to get people on board that's going to go out there and knock on these doors, that's going to set the table, for the AD to be able
Mhm.
to walk in there and bring it home and close the deal.
And close the
Right.
deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
you're looking for me to knock on the door and close the deal, okay, then that's gonna be difficult. I'm gonna be lacking in a lot of areas as it pertains to the everyday running of the department and all the other things, all the other nuances that go along with being the director of athletics for 15 sports and I don't know how many coaches and staff and student athletes and the whole 9 yards. So you want to make sure that you're not taken away from the other main athletic director duties in a quest to try to get as much money into the department as possible.
Right.
Dr. Cavill has a interesting question, and maybe we can tackle it or our next guest coming up because I'm sure. And again, I know I give the ads a hard time sometimes, but they do have a hard job. How challenging is it to generate sponsorships from the local and regional levels in this current market? Because boy, the market is bad now. But we know who we can blame most of that on.
Yeah,
It's very
but
challenging.
Carlos, but even in this market, I mean, somebody's got to get out there. Now, Will, I think you were right when you were saying that you come up with a person. See, to me, every athletic department should have somebody that's beating the bushes for those corporate dollars.
Or
See, to me,
two. Or two.
right.
All three.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
That's what I'm saying.
good.
If we're doing it from the corporate sponsorship level, then you don't have to put your teams out there like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lesser impact on them student athletes having to go out there, especially I'm speaking for basketball, playing 10 and 11 games. That's not good, man. That's not good for them mentally. That's not good for your program. That's why you don't have people coming to your games because you start your conference seasons out in such a big deficit. They don't want to come out and see you. So now you're losing that live gate because you put those kids out there in November and December as doing fundraising, and the fans they look at the record. They're not interested in coming out watching a team that's 0-11, and they can have a conference, a team that can compete in the conference, but they're not coming out because of the record. And the record is where it is because they're out there raising money for the university. I don't mind doing some of it. Like I said, sacrificing 3 or 4 games, to me, that's fine. That's part of it. But I think when you get up over that, now you're messing with my future because my record is not going to be as good as it should be because I'm always on somebody else's court trying to win a game. Let me play at home some.
And that's why, we would always try to take care of our coaches, on the back end or what have you, in terms of extending their contract, in terms of trying to give them some, longevity, that sort of thing. Because, I know that, Coach Pettaway, when it's time for you to go and look for that next job and your record being what it is because of, the losses from the guarantees that they're going to be an AD behind a desk somewhere, butthole, no doubt, that doesn't know the concept, doesn't know how the game is played, that's going to evaluate you based off of what they see on that paper, not understanding all the sacrifices that you've made, in terms of helping to, supplement the budget and things of that nature. So, I want to make sure my coaches have that longevity on the front end, so that it kind of helps. I don't know if soften the blow is the right word, but just try to help alleviate some of those consequences, that sort of thing. But I mean, at the end of the day, conference record does matter,
Right.
Carlos. Conference games do matter. And, when we sit down in terms of the evaluation process, that sort of thing, we're going to be talking in terms of the conference schedule, the conference slate, where we ended up conference wise, that sort of thing. And if the guarantees have played a role in terms of where we are from a conference point of view, then we got to have that conversation to see what it is that we can do to help lessen the blow, so to speak, so that we can do better, from a conference point of view, if that's an issue. Are there other issues involved? That sort of thing. So, a lot of conversations need to be had. A lot of talking, a lot of meeting of the minds, that sort of thing. And I'm still a hardliner, Carlos, but at the same time, I'm a realist on this thing, and I like to grade evenly.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Right.
I think what it states, continue to have the conversations, and I think we got to find a happy medium.
Right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
somewhere.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
also alums, and I know that's a tough issue. Some talk about it, but they don't be about it. Some don't donate back for whatever reason. But this is a multifaceted problem we'll have to address, and I think it's going to take multifaceted
Mm-hmm.
solutions. But
Right.
I, for one, say the happy medium, and I'm a hard line on some things too. If I'm the last man standing, if I were in control, no. You might get one huge one every 4 years. Group of 5, it will be a little bit more flexible.
Carlos,
But
I see you working on eliminating some things in your budget.
well, I tell you what, I just wouldn't use a sledgehammer
Right.
to cut away. I'll be strategic with it, and I'll use it like a little scalpels, because you come down and chop everything all at once. Yeah, you're in the problem. And I never forget this. Dr. Cavill came to my home and showed me something he was working on, and putting in all of the notions and the factors. And when you talk to me about maybe some have to go down to Division 2, it was at that time it was more than one athletic department.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? The masses would be in an uproar because they wouldn't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But if the solution is that's a conversation you got to have, and a hard one. But again, I say we can find a happy medium with
I
this.
agree, Carlos. Carlos,
Well,
I'm saying that's just like you take that figure that A.D. Brown threw out there when he said for basketball you want to bring in 400, 500,000. All right, what is my original budget? If I'm bringing in 400, what percentage of that? How much was my original budget with me having to bring in 400,000 or 500,000? See, I think that all that to me has to come into consideration. Don't ask me to bring in $400,000 or $500,000 when you're not putting that into my budget. I mean, my budget from the beginning is not that. Why?
Well, that's the tough conversation we would have in a meeting.
And the answer is because you are the coach of a revenue sport, and we have to try to maximize the revenues, in order for the non-revenue sports to be able to function and thrive and survive. Unfortunately, the onus is on football, men's and women's basketball to help fund the non-revenue sports. And really that's pretty much where it is. They owe their survival to you guys, in essence. Because at the end of the day, where the cuts are going to start, it's going to be in the non-revenue sector. You're going to have to try to do things as evenly as possible so that everybody feels a pinch. But bottom line is it's going to start in the non-revenue sector.
Let's see. Willie Bolden says, Carlos, go hire experts in fundraising as part of your athletic department.
Right.
I would think some are doing that with the expertise. But again, another discussion to be had. You know, you got to kind of reinvent yourself.
But if you hire AD, Carlos, if you hire AD with fundraising experience, but let's say he doesn't have administrative experience, or he doesn't have experience in terms of NCAA compliance or things of that nature, and you got 5 teams that's not meeting APR. Okay, now what have you done in terms of how you have shaped your particular program? So you can chase the dollar and chase the guy that has experience getting the dollar, but you can't do it at the expense of some of the other areas on your campus or in your department that need help. You know, for some institutions, they need a compliance guy, worse than they need the fundraising guy. You know, or somebody, you know, in that particular area, that sort of thing. So, I mean, you know, you have to weigh things as it pertains to your particular department, you know, when you're going through that particular hiring process.
Right. Hey, but no, Will, this is the only thing I have to say to that. To me, an AD is not a fundraiser when he's sending his teams out to raise money. That's not fundraising to me.
No, that's, like I said, that's maximizing your revenue sports.
But that's not an athletic director.
It's not fundraising. It's not fundraising, Coach Pettaway. It's not. Right. It's not. And you know, I will put it like this, and I tell most coaches this: if I allowed you to go out and play guarantees in terms of raising funds for your particular program and took the budget away, my budget away from your program, none of those programs could survive on their own. Football could not survive. Scholarships, salaries, the whole 9 yards, okay, equipment, the whole 9 yards, off of guarantees from 2 guarantee games. Football is going to spend, Carlos, well over close to $2 million. Period.
Well, some would say the love of money is the root of all evil. I think that's what the good book says. But I say, being facetious, no, I actually agree with it. The lack of money. All of these problems, if we just had some more money, right?
That's true. That's true.
Hold that thought. We got to take a timeout well past the timeout. When we come back, I'll check on and see if my special guest is ready, and we'll continue this conversation. Also, Coach Pettaway, we're going to get into that NBA playoffs.
Yes, sir.
And quickly, somebody said, well, Carlos, what Miami's going to do? They're not going to walk it back. They're not going to walk it back. They're not going to walk it back. We'll take a timeout. You're watching the Carlos Brown Show right here on the Black College Sports Network. We shall return.
It's like a loop machine. All around town, people trying to get down. It's like a loop machine.
You're looking for the latest information on Southern University sports, the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and HBCU athletics. There's only one place to go. Tune in to the Carlos Brown Show, exclusively on the Black College Sports Network.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
Good morning. Welcome back to the Coles Brown Show right here on the Black College Sports Network. We're now joined by our special guest, Rodney Kirschner, Associate Deputy Athletic Director for Southern University. Rodney, good afternoon. Welcome to the Coles Brown Show.
Hey, good afternoon, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Rodney, I'm sure you heard some of our conversation leading up to the break, and we'll get your thoughts on what we were talking about. But first and foremost, the growth of Southern University Athletic Department since you've been there. Talk about that growth.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just finishing my 14th year here at Southern, and I can say from firsthand experience, we're definitely way ahead now than where we were when we first came in back in 2011. This year alone, we've already won 6 championships. So very excited about that. We're further in the Commissioner's Cup than we've been. We finished in the top 10 in attendance in football again for the 7th out of 8 years. Basketball, for our 5th consecutive year, we've led the league in attendance. Our APR scores came back really good, which is something we really pride ourselves on, especially everything we went through back in the early 2013, 14s, 15s with our APR unusable data ban. And basically, a lot of people don't know about that, but basically what SMU went through, kind of the death penalty, is kind of what we got back then. If you really want to explain it, we lost scholarships, we lost funding, we lost practice time, we lost basically anything you could think of, we lost at that time. And so under our athletic director, Coach Jones, we really pride ourselves on kind of being a model for the NCAA of schools that are going through similar situations on kind of how to rebound, regroup, and exceed. What APR is, what the NCAA puts on us, and so I really feel we're in a great spot right now, but we're only getting better.
Yes, I would agree with that. There's been some growth. But are they still – I know we've talked about how important that job is, being the athletic director on the staff. How important is it now to is there some issues that you still have to be concerned about in growing an athletic department in light of, the economy has changed, NIL, collectives, all of that stuff. How do you just navigate through that as athletic staff?
Yeah. So basically, college athletics now is every day is a new day. The landscape of college athletics is changing, whether you like it or not. And so under our leadership of Coach Banks, I feel we do a great job because we're not afraid to address the issues as a staff. So pretty much every Monday we have our weekly staff meetings, and unfortunately we're in there longer than some of us probably would like. But you just kind of start trying to address the issues that are ever facing the college landscape. Of course, nobody thought we would go from an APR, a musical data band, right into kind of getting the athletic department back on track. Then all of a sudden we hit COVID. You know, COVID kind of shut the world down and really kind of shut everything down. But then coming out of COVID, the after effects, kind of like you're speaking about, the fact that, you know, you really got to think about inflation now. So, you know, putting a team on a charter bus anymore, you know, that charter bus has went up 60% compared to what it used to. You know, gas is more expensive than what it used to be. Food's more expensive than what it used to be. Hotels are more expensive than what they used to be. So it's just, again, kind of having a game plan. I think Coach Banks does a good job because he puts us in a lot of professional development situations. So we go to different like schools like us. So we've been to McNeese, Northwestern State, Southeastern. We've met with their staff. We talk with LSU quite a bit. And, you know, we all just kind of get a chance to really talk about, like I said, the changing landscape. You know, NIL is something completely different nowadays than when I was coaching here at Southern. We didn't have to worry about NIL, you know, but now as soon as you recruit a player, you know, the first thing they ask you, it's not even your tradition or your history or championships. It's, you know, how much money, you know, what can you offer me? And so, you know, those are things you got to take into consideration, you know, kind of going what you guys were talking about before I got on. You know, unfortunately, money for people with everything, but, you know, you got to have a game plan on how you attack it. And at the same time, you can't tell your coaches, no, we can't do that, or, you know, we can't do this. At the same time, we're expecting them to compete for championships. So you got to kind of find that middle ground of, you know, what we can do, what we can't do, you know, how can we resolve the issues that we need to, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Rodney, let me ask you this: how difficult is it with the transfer portal? I don't understand how you all are, not just Southern, how these institutions are maintaining the APR when there's a revolving door with the transfer portal.
Correct. You're absolutely right. You have to have tough and honest conversations. You know, we're lucky, like I said, it starts with our leadership, from our board to our president, chancellor, you know, on down to Coach Banks. You know, I feel we have a great athletic department staff. We have great coaches who we really sit down and talk to. You know, a lot of these players you're only recruiting for 1 year. And a lot of times you're only going to have them on campus for 7 months, you know, and you really got to put an emphasis on player relationships, connections, and then kind of your goals. You know, what when we recruit you to Southern, you know, we do a lot of things where, you know, obviously championships are very important to us, but at the same time, so is getting your grades, and especially if you get a chance to graduate. So we put a lot of emphasis on that with APR because, as you said, you know, these kids are coming and going just as quick. And so you really got to, like I said, you really have to have the tough conversations with your coaches, our academic staff. You know, we put a lot of pressure on them, compliance, you know, and at the end of the day, like I said, we really try to have those realistic conversations and develop those relationships where we sit down with the student athlete, say, hey, what do you want to get out of your experience while you're at Southern? And then with whatever you do want to do, we'll try to help your dreams come true. But at the same time, you have to have a commitment level to us, not only in the classroom, but as well as on the playing field.
Yeah, I can remember Coach Pettaway and Wheeler when Southern had that issue with APR and what have you. And now, you know, I just kind of looked, Rodney, at the staff. You can see the investments that y'all put in, more people in place to help with APR, and it's impressive. It's a lot more members on that staff. Let's say when 2011. So an investment was there.
Yes, yeah. No, Coach Banks. You know, you guys were kind of saying it earlier, you know, as I was hopping on, but you know, and I'll be truthful, Coach Banks might get mad at me, but when you sat there in front of those people at the NCAA, you know, they told us back then we needed to go to Division III. There was no ifs, ands, buts about it. They told us. They said that our priorities, our funding, you know, the way we were handling business, basically, that we didn't need to worry about athletics. We needed to go drop down to Division III. And as embarrassing as it was, you know, we kind of rolled up our sleeves. We came up with an action plan. You know, part of that was bringing in more help around we all can say we still don't really have as much help as we'd like in certain areas. You always want more personnel, but you make do at this level with what you got, and you don't make any excuses about it. And that was the thing that we really noticed, that we needed more academic help, we needed more compliance help, and we brought in some great staff, and as well as in sports nutrition performance area as well. So those things are important, but our saying here is it's not only about it's all about degrees and championships. You got to get to the D before you get to the C. And so our biggest thing, even with the transfer portal and the fact that we know a lot of these student athletes won't be here long term, but while they're here, our goal is to try to graduate them. And we've been able to do that. Right now we're right at 80% graduation with our student athletes. So we're very excited about that. We've got more kids on the SWAC honor roll than we ever have. We got more kids with 3.5 and 4.0 GPAs. So things like that we do pride ourselves in.
Right. And guys, that's part of the experience.
Oh yeah.
Also with winning. The 2025 Outdoor Track and Field Championships were held at in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. How was that experience for you guys? And then right after, I got a call, which I already knew. I got a call and say, hey, they're tearing up the field. They're getting ready to put down, which we had kind of heard a couple of months ago. Now you're starting on that. And that's kind of part of putting back into the athletic department.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. No, we did get a host for the second year, the 2025 this year, SWAC Outdoor Track and Field Championship. I thought it went really well, really smooth. We have an unbelievable facility. Obviously, we're one of the only few SWAC schools that actually has a track inside, besides Alabama A&M, inside the football stadium. So, you get a little luxury with that, because some of our student athletes can, hang out underneath our concourse. But if they really need to get out of the heat, they can come inside the air conditioning, hospitality rooms, spectator areas, things like that. But I thought all in all, it went really well. I appreciate you guys for always promoting HBCU sports, especially the SWAC. But I think a lot of times we just don't get the respect that we deserve. We have some incredibly talented student athletes, especially in the track and field area. We saw some Pine Bluff set the 4x1 record, and those guys were fast. Obviously, the Stubbs kid from Alabama State, he's an unbelievable athlete. The girls from FAMU did really well. So it was a great experience, and I think a great time to showcase our facilities at Southern. We pride ourselves under Coach Banks' leadership. We really worked hard to get, the $1.2 million track out there that we knew would bring back not only the Pelican relays, which we brought those back, which we're excited about, and that's only growing. But then we got to bring the track and field SWAC Championship to Southern, which I think is great. And then, like you said, we are starting. We started right after the track meet on our. It's about $1.3 million project on the new turf. So we'll have a state-of-the-art turf that will have the cooling system, so the turf won't be as hot. It's going to have state-of-the-art padding, so our injuries will be cut down. Basically, what Tulane and SMU, some of the other big schools, and the Saints kind of have. That's exactly what we went with. So we're trying to make an investment and make a smart investment. For us, you want to have all the bells and the whistles, but at the same time, how can you afford it, and how can the upkeep be on it? So that's something we really looked at. But we're very excited. I think once people see the turf, they'll be excited about it, and kind of the color scheme and things that we're doing on it. So we're excited about it.
Can't wait to see that. What's the end project time that it's going to end, the project for the resurfacing the football field?
So unfortunately, we do live in South Louisiana, so we know rain's always a
yeah.
always a
Oh
thing.
yeah.
But our anticipated project goal date is the second week of July. It'll be ready.
Wow.
So we are excited about that. But luckily, we have a great football coach who understands a lot of things. So he has no problem going onto the practice field until it's ready. So I know he'll conduct his camps and things like that. But something that we're always in constant contact with our staff, so they understand, because it doesn't only affect football, it affects track and field, because we do have some people that are still trying to qualify for regionals. Then, soccer, we have a couple soccer camps as well, because our soccer team plays on our football field now. Something we did for Title IX issues to kind of help elevate our soccer team. And I think the experience inside the stadium for them has been really good. But right now, our completion date is the second week of July.
Yeah. Wow. I actually probably thought it was going to be a little longer than that. But athletic field is an investment. Any other projects, I guess, kind of like a wish list that you guys have that you would like to implement in the future?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think Coach Banks gets mad at me because I have a lot. But something we are trying to work on right now that we've been out in the community fundraising is that we're trying to do a hitting facility for our baseball, softball. We're trying to put a covered facility, not fully enclosed, but at least that they can use all year round. So that's kind of our big project right now that we're really trying to get off the ground. We just moved our tennis courts. So our tennis courts are where the old barn used to be between baseball and softball, because we're building a new welcome center right there next to the Seymour Gym. So they've already started construction on that. So we're basically almost done with our tennis facility. So we moved it over there. So we're excited about that because we'll be able to resurface those courts for our student athletes and kind of give them a little bit better playing surface for them. We're talking about, we got a volleyball locker room project in the works. We'd really like to do something for them in Seymour Gym. And then AD Banks has been really big. You've probably noticed it around campus, but we're really trying to tell our history. So we have a lot of branding projects that we're trying to do. We hit the baseball facility already. So, we got pictures of Ricky Weeks and Coach Kadar and Danny Goodwin, some of our Southern greats, Lou Brock there. We did a little bit on Lumford Stadium with our 3 Hall of Famers, Mel Blount, Harold Carmichael, and Aeneas Williams, and then Coach Pete Richardson in our championship. So we're trying to do a lot of branding projects as well, because the biggest thing is you got to tell your story. And unfortunately for us, we had a fire in the early 2000s that was in the mini dome that knocked out our archives. So it's been a tough project on me, but you still got to tell your story. So we're slowly trying to get all our facilities a little more branding, a little more signage up there. So when our fans do come in, they feel a little more excited about seeing our history.
We're visiting with Rodney Kirschner, Associate Deputy Athletic Director, and we appreciate the time, Rodney, because a lot of times they kid me about being tough on the directors of athletics and athletic department, but it comes from a place of love, Rodney. Trust me, because I like to see the best, and I understand. I often, question AD Wheeler Brown. It's a tough job. I understand that, and you need everybody to buy in. Basically, you need help from multiple directions. With that being said, I don't know if you heard some of the conversations, but the guaranteed games are always such an interesting debate. Always. I'm not a director of athletics. I'm not an athletic administration, but I'll just put it to you this way: Southern University announced, I don't know officially, about Houston next year, 2026. San Jose State. Is there? Do you guys have the discussions about in basketball? Throw that into non-conference games. How much of a balance weighing from those top guarantee games to the group of 5 games, and what does the future hold for that period of scheduling?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people, everybody wants to give you their opinion about who you should play, right? And biggest thing I think it is, especially football, and I'll start with football. Football, you really need to look at kind of what your needs are. So we have we're luckily in a situation where with AD Banks, we don't necessarily have to play a guaranteed game every year in football, which definitely helps our student athletes out because you got to look at the landscape of who you're playing in Division I. We did sign on. We're going to Fresno State this year. So that's going to be a challenge for us logistically because, Fresno State is in Northern California. So, that's a 4-hour charter plane ride, and a lot of people don't realize how much it takes to move a football team, for instance. So you got to kind of take in a lot of considerations or a lot of factors, I would say, of what you're trying to get out of a guarantee game, for instance. You don't want to just go play somebody where you're going to blow that guarantee game just trying to get there and back. So we look at those factors. We try to look, and we try to do it for men's and women's basketball at the same time. We try to stay within a 6 to 8 hour radius because most of those games you can get there on a bus. But at the same time, it's a giant chess piece because football, everybody wants us to play Tuskegee or Tougaloo or Morehouse, which we would love to play those schools, but the SIAC schedule comes out way after the SWAC schedule comes out, and our SWAC football schedule is set for the next 5 years. So it's a giant chess piece trying to get the games, week 2, week 3, week 1, at the same time. And you just got to kind of look at what your needs are, budgetary, what you're trying to, like I said, we have a game plan of what we try to accomplish with our money, because we do share some of that revenue back with each sport that goes out, gets the revenue. So we do have a plan with our teams. It's not fair to tell men's basketball, hey, you guys got to go out and bring $1 million in, but you don't get any of that money. Right. Even though it does help fund some of the Olympic sports, especially, but at the same time, like KJ would tell me, he'd be like, Coach, man, and he's great, and so is T. Graves. They'll play anybody, but at the same time, it's got to make sense to go who you play because, you could go play a game and get really banged up, and it can really set you off path because you're getting injuries or, it's not necessarily the level of competition, but it's just the physicality of the competition. So, you got to kind of consider that, like football, you don't want to go play a tough football game and then come back and have 2 or 3 tough conference games right in a row because your kids might not have bounced back from that experience or that trip. Then we also look at, like I said, travel distance. It's different when you go to the East Coast because you're on an East Coast time zone, or you go to the West Coast, you're on a West Coast time zone, or you go to elevation. We have a lot of kids that have sickle cell, so we have to think about elevation. Things like that. So a lot of that comes into play as we do scheduling. And again, we just try to make it make sense. That's our biggest thing.
Hey Rodney, real quick, when they call you all about football, do they ask about the band? Do they want the band there? Like when you go to Fresno, will the band be going to Fresno also?
They will on this one just because because we honestly did the contract in 2018. So
okay.
we did it so long ago that it wasn't there. Now we're working with our band department, all that, trying to see if we're going to be able to afford to take the full band, or if it's going to be a half the band. But because again, a lot of people don't realize that our bands, especially HBCU, the pageantry of our bands,
right?
They're almost harder to. They're not almost. They are harder to almost maneuver than a football team, for instance.
Right. Yep.
Our band is world renowned as the Human Jukebox is. They take 5 buses.
Right.
Our football team only takes 3 buses. So,
Wow.
So it's things like that you logistically you got to kind of think about going through. But we kind of have as you say, Coach Pettaway, we kind of have a structure now when we talk to teams. Usually I start the conversations. Obviously, I go to 8 games, Coach Graves, if they want to play. But kind of my starting negotiations, we have a certain number without the band, and then if you want me to bring my band, then that number jumps.
Right.
And so I commend Dr. Scott and them going to play Grambling, going up there to play Ohio State. That's going to be a tough one. We got approached a couple years ago to play Notre Dame, but we couldn't get the financial agreement done. So it just didn't make sense for us. And that's kind of the way with a lot of big schools. It's not that we don't want to play because our kids love the experience, and that's the thing you got to think about student athletes. They love that experience. When we went to LSU, our kids, that was something they talked about for quite a while. But also, what a lot of people don't understand, it helps with their film and their tape. So
Right.
they got a chance to play against, some top draft picks and things like that. And so, that really helps our student athletes, especially for recent Senior Bowl or HBCU Legacy Bowl or, things like that. Because that's what you try to get those football student athletes to go to get that experience so they have a chance to get drafted. But yeah, like I said, we kind of, over the years since I've taken over football scheduling and men's basketball scheduling, we kind of have a breakdown of kind of how I approach the negotiations, because like I said, at the end of the day, we want to play everybody, and we have alumni fan bases everywhere. Last year, we were able to go to the West Coast for men's basketball. We played Southern Cal and Loyola Marymount, and our great Los Angeles chapter came, and we had a great time with the fellowship with them, and they took us out to eat. We had an incredible time, but like I said, financially, logistically, it just has to make sense,
Right.
and that's something that we always kind of really take into consideration.
It's one thing that we did talk about, and I wanted to bring it up a week ago, but the NCAA, I guess, committee that focuses on football, it's very likely that FCS football will be playing 12 games permanently. Does that give you something else to think about that you'll be up at night, Rodney, thinking about?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you just gotta again, we're all in favor of a 12-game schedule because it just gives you another week to look at possibly playing a great adversary. Like I said, under Coach Banks, we always want to have 5 home games. That's our goal. We always want to have 5 home games at Mumford Stadium. But sometimes because how early we do some of these home games, or we do these contractual games, you run out of weeks. Because I'll use like Nickel State. We brought Nickel State back on. We brought them at home last year. We go back to them, I think, in 2027. But that's already a date that's gone. So now you look at Jackson State, for instance. Jackson State rolled off our schedule. So us and A.D. Robinson got on the phone real quick. When we all noticed that that's too important of a rival, a great HBCU game not to be played. So we went in there and did a home contract right away, and they roll off again on our schedule, I think in 29 and 30 that we're already working out, another home with them. So the 12th game definitely will help us because it gives us another playing date that we can really look at, and then try to figure it out. And then at the same time, like I said, you try to get with your sports performance staff, obviously the head football coach, and talk about, because you really don't want to play 3 or 4 or 5 really tough games back to back, and then not take a bye. So that's you always, especially on the back end of the SWAC schedule, we always know who we got right there at the Bayou Classic and what date that falls on. But those 3 or 4 games ahead of that, are always crucial games because that's usually when we play all corn. We play the bulk of the West, so you always want to be as healthy as you can going into that. So it'll definitely help us. Like I said, we're excited once it does get passed. Like I said, this gives us another date. And then we're trying to bring back some of the old rivals. We're working on trying to do something with Hampton. We've talked to Howard. We've been talking with Tennessee State. Whether it's a classic game or on-campus game, something like that. But we've had those negotiations, but like I'm telling you guys, unfortunately, a lot of people don't realize that you schedule so far ahead in football that some of these games they take away your dates pretty quick. And then if you're not careful, you might only have 4 home games instead of being able to play a classic. Because we like playing games at Mumford. And in under 80 Banks, we've really got our tailgating down better. We've got our parking down better. Even though unfortunately we only have freeways in and out of campus, so our traffic does get pretty stalemate pretty quick. But it gives us a chance, like I said, that we can try to add another home game or things like that. So it'll definitely help.
Well, on that note, we appreciate the time. We'll have to get you back. Some interesting information shared. Also, I would like to offer a suggestion, even in the future, if we could get a basketball tournament. Maybe not a huge one, but a 14. and look at doing that. I think that would help doing, especially in the conference season. But I understand the issues now. You gotta schedule them, but balance is the key, I think, Rodney.
Yes.
It is.
Balance. Yes.
It really is. And we've talked to some certain people about, trying to do an HBCU tournament. I know we've been reached by a couple of promoters to try to do something in Atlanta. Obviously, the Chris Paul has a tournament where he invites HBCU schools, and we've been invited to that too. But it just financially and the timing of it just didn't work out. And
Yes, got to get the money. Rodney, I brag on that Southern's brand. We're not going for peanuts. That's
correct.
just my saying. That's my saying.
Correct. And I can tell you that I wouldn't say I'm a tough negotiator, but I have a certain price point before we even start talking, if that makes sense, because I know what we have to offer.
You have to.
And I think, and I think that's where, and I can be honest with you guys, and like I tell our boosters all the time, sometimes I think that's what we get frustrated at is that, we have 5 great home games, and you've been to our home games, and you see we'll have great attendance, and then we'll have a couple games that are not as highly attended, but when we play Jackson or FAM, our fans will travel. Well, we love the fact that our fans travel, but at the same time, we don't get any of that revenue. That's all the visiting schools revenue. So,
right.
We're always trying to say, even if you don't come to the game, just buy your season tickets, contribute somehow. And also kind of like you guys were saying before, I know Wheeler was saying it earlier that, we have 18 sports, 19 if you count cheerleading. So we have 19 sports, but, 12 of those we offer season ticket packages, support all our sports because all our sports matter. And so, the contributions our great fans do, because the Jaguar Nation is unbelievable, but the contributions we do for football are unbelievable. But at the same time, we have an incredible men's and women's basketball program, baseball, softball. We won 20 games this year, first time since I think 2011 that we've won 20 games. So all our programs are on the rise. Soccer, won a championship this year. So like I said, we're trying to do a lot of things for a lot of our programs, but it helps when everybody supports all sports, not just our main sports, but we understand where we're at too, though. So we understand football's king. I think if you can't say that, you don't understand the dynamic.
Right.
We understand football's king, but like I said, we're very proud of like I said, us bringing on more and more support staff. I think our game day experience is second to none. I think we got to really showcase that at homecoming this year. People really got to see what we were able to do with our fireworks, with pyros and things like that. T-shirt giveaways, things that we're just trying to enhance. Thanking our fans for coming to those games. We all understand what it's like sitting in Mumford or any SWAC stadium, in August and early part of September. We all understand how hot it can be, but like I said, we always trying to do something to enhance our fan experience because without our fans, it doesn't make it what it is.
Black Card Sports Network says, can the BCSN Game Time Show get an invite to Mumford? I guess you're talking about this upcoming football season.
Always welcome. Always welcome. Just let me know. I'll set it up. Part of my duties, and that's the thing a lot of our people don't realize. A lot of our staff does double duties. So, I'm over the sports information department, so as well as I'm the director of strategic communications and media relations. So you guys are always welcome. Just let me know and we'll set it up. I do have a student-led pregame show that we do outside of Mumford. So you guys are more than welcome to, just like I said, let me know what you'd like to do. We can go live, do a live programming section, before the game, or I'll get you guys set up.
Okay.
We're, me. I'm easy to work with, but my main job is to always promote our sports. We've had an incredible year. Like I said, not only winning 6 championships, but we have one of our soccer student athletes is an Arthur Ashe Scholarship finalist. She's the only HBCU girl as a finalist. So like I said, we're always trying to tell the story. We're the first HBCU program to win a women's game in the NCAA tournament. So things like that. We're, like I said, we're always trying to find ways to tell our story. Right now we have Thibodeau on baseball, he's leading the country in on-base percentage and slugging percentage, has a chance to get onto the Golden Spikes Award, something we haven't had at Southern since Ricky Weeks was here. So, like I said, I'm all about trying to work with any type of media because, like I said, I appreciate you guys, what you do every weekend, telling the story of not only Southern but other HBCU sports. It is important, and like I said earlier, I think people don't realize how much talent we have, not only in football, but women's basketball, and men's basketball, baseball, softball, just how much talent we have across the board, not only in the SWAC, but, the MEAC and HBCU sports.
Yes, sir. No one can tell the story like we can. And, Rodney, a personal favor, have that place lit up for FAMU, because I got one of my colleagues took a shot there. And I'm going to call his name out again, A.D. Drew. Yeah. And I guess when I talked about the end zones, as I was told, they weren't going to get, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, they weren't going to get the redone. Just the from the 10 goal line to goal line, but that's all right.
Okay.
Let's make sure it's for FAMU. It's rocking in there.
Oh yeah, and that's part of it too.
Go ahead.
Like I said, that's part of it too. We've enhanced our end zone experience. We have our end zone suites now. In basketball, we have our courtside seating. And that's part of it. Like I said, trying to get the fans something closer to, and like I said, and we definitely want to pack it all. So we got 5 home games. We're trying to get everybody in there.
Oh, there it goes. Get AD a special seat there in the end zone.
Hey, we can do that. Hey, and they're not tents. Ours aren't tents. They're actually AC units. We got TV power in there. Like I said, and you get, you get the food and the drink packages as well. So, like I said, it's a great time in there. But we'll make sure we got a seat for him.
Well, if he comes, just no crawfish for him because of that remark.
Gotcha.
We want to thank you, Rodney, and appreciate you coming on. Let's do it again soon. Let's connect and talk Southern University athletics. To you and your family, we appreciate you, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you, guys, and thank you guys.
Rodney.
Take care. All right, now. Take care.
All right. That was Rodney Kirschner, Associate Deputy AD for Southern University. There's some things I didn't know. See, it's always good to get information and get it from the source. We'll take a quick time out. When we come back, NBA updates. Pat Riley, don't talk to me until that Miami Heat problem is fixed. We'll be back after this timeout.
Let's face it, shopping for insurance can be time-consuming. That's why when it comes to your auto, home, and life insurance needs, make things simple and trust the experts at Allstate. They will help you get the coverage that fits your needs while helping you bundle your life, home, and auto policies. Bundling saves you money, sure, but it also saves you time, so you can enjoy the things that matter most even more. Contact me, Tammy Haynes, your local agent, for a free personalized insurance quote. Allstate, are you in good hands?
There's a shot to right. It could be. Right field. Grand slam. What a shot. That's how you get hot, young fella.
Thank you guys for what you do for HBCU athletics. This is a fantastic avenue for all of us. This is our ESPN, so we love what you guys do, and all you guys at BCSN. We really appreciate what it is that you guys do for us.
Are you hungry for authentic Caribbean food? Like jerk chicken, oxtail, red snapper, shrimp, tofu, and rasta pasta? Well, find your way over to Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta.
Them belly full, but we hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, open daily from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And on Friday and Saturday, we're open till 4 a.m. Come to Mango's and put some spice in your life.
Oh, we've got a good thing going.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta. For more info or directions, call 404-698-3992 or log on to mangoscaribbeanrestaurant.com. For instant coupons, text MANGOS to 313131.
Tell your mama hungry, papa hungry, brother hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, authentic Caribbean cuisines.
Oh, no. tell them
Welcome back to this week's edition of the Coles Brown Show right here on the Black College Sports Network. We're going to have to double up this 10 minutes and go fast, but welcome, A.D. Drew, the shot taker. Play your mic.
Mute your mic. Unmute your mic.
Somebody must have hit it the second time. Carlos, you can keep your crawfish. I just make sure I got my jambalaya and my gumbo there, and maybe a beignet. You know, you keep crawfish.
Oh, y'all have time. We don't have to rush. Okay, well, look, extended time. Well, thanks for being on the show today. First, we want to get into the baseball, SWAC baseball tournament, because you kind of gave out some information in our text message group, and you can explain it better than I can.
All right. First of all, before I get into that, got to start off with tough day yesterday. Obviously, we know what happened with my alma mater with the presidential search, but
yeah,
that's why y'all got to get out and vote. You know, that didn't happen in a vacuum yesterday. That's something that's been for years with our voting pattern down in the state of Florida. I don't vote in Florida, so I have limited say-so in it. But that's something that's been going on. But I'll say that for the show tomorrow. That's number one. Then my hometown, St. Louis, Missouri, was devastated by some severe tornadoes yesterday. Ripped through my old neighborhood.
Wow.
Yeah, I sent a post out on my Facebook page. About 5 blocks from my house that I grew up in. A lot of childhood memories just up in the air, just gone. And then had a death in the family on top of it yesterday. So tough day yesterday, but that's why I'm here, because this is my therapy, getting on here talking to you guys.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I understand that. And we thoughts and prayers to St. Louis, Missouri. And you know what, FAMU? Look, it could happen
to anybody.
To all HBCUs. We have to be diligent and we have to be on watch. And man, it's tough. We can only count on ourselves, basically. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, 80% of our HBCUs are in red states, and those that are in red states that are a state institution, let this be the between Tennessee State and FAMU over the last year and a half. Let this be a warning to state institutions in red states. That's all I'm going to say right now.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah,
I understand.
Now, let's get to some baseball.
Right.
Had a lot of drama coming into the weekend. Today is kind of anticlimactic. Looks like everything is sold up. We know the 8 participants, first of all, in the tournament. We know 6 of the 8 seeds in the tournament. There's only one race that is still to be determined, and that's the race at the top. Oh. It's real simple. A FAMU win and a Bethune loss will flip those two in the standings. Bethune's currently in first. FAMU's in second. FAMU is a half game behind, with one loss behind Bethune, because we don't go by half games and whole games like you do with the MLB. And for the SWAC, they go by win percentage. So it's real simple. FAMU at 800, which is what they would be with the win, is better than Bethune would be at 791 with a loss.
You want me to tell who I'm going for?
Well, right now it's Bethune Cook. Bethune Cook was leading the game 5-0. So they're off to a great start.
Okay, I'm glad you got it, because on the SWAC site, the stat link is not updated. So I'm glad you.
Okay. Well, no, that's the wrong thing then. It's not updated. I'm sorry. Okay, that's what I went to. It's the wrong thing. That's wrong.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, that's wrong. I'm sorry.
But yeah, Grambling. Let's see. I just had. I don't know why. Let's see. Grambling, Valley are done. They played a doubleheader on yesterday, along with PV started their series early against Alabama State due to their graduation. So those four are off today. So you just have Texas Southern and Bethune, which I think is going to be the game to watch. Alabama A&M, Arkansas Pine Bluff, Florida A&M on Southern at Jackson State. Obviously, we know why I didn't say the FAMU game versus Alcorn was the game to watch with that race, because we all know what FAMU is supposed to do in that game. Should they go out and play, especially if they play their regulars in this ball game. So the only game that really has some drama is this Bethune Texas Southern game, and of course Jackson State Southern, because of who the two opponents are.
Yeah,
but as far as the race is concerned, that game is a non-factor.
Southern's locked in at 7th, correct?
Correct. Texas Southern is locked in at 8. And what would be really interesting, should Bethune win this game, they will face Texas Southern for a 4th consecutive time to open up the tournament.
Yeah, turn back right back around.
Yes.
My Jaguars have it tough either way. Either way, if they could have moved up, but they're not. They're locked in at the 7th seed. Now, with that being said, AD, the tournament itself, you made note of it that it's going to be different than the years past.
Yes, it is different than in obviously we no longer have the divisions. In the past we've always had the 1 East versus 4 West and vice versa as we flip through the tournament. But give me a second. I am trying to let me bring up the bracket right here. But obviously, with no divisions, you go 1-8, 2-7, 3-6, and 4-5. And Coach Pettaway knows normally in the second round, your 1-8 winner plays your 4-5 winner.
Right.
Not with the baseball tournament. Your 1-8 winner plays the 3-6 winner.
Wow.
Ain't that's not tough in there, huh?
That ain't a break for that doggone number 1 seed.
and your two, and if I scroll down, you'll see that your 2-7 plays your 4-5. So it round 1 is the same, the way they broke the brackets up. Round 2 is totally different. Now, my Sunday colleague Brian and I were arguing. I told Brian it's almost advantageous to be in the number 2 spot. Right. The way this bracket is drawn up with the seeding and the time schedule than in the number 1 slot.
Yeah, because AD then, the number 1 regular season champion, whoever that's going to be, you would think they would kind of have a little favoritism there. Yes. Did I say favoritism? By being the number 1 regular seed. Wow.
But they should have some favor. They should have favor though, Carlos.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem like it now.
And then let's look at the times. And Coach Pettaway and AD Bryant can really tell this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a number one seed. I opened up the tournament at 9:00 in the morning.
Huh.
You know, I don't know what sport that we play at 9:00 in the morning outside of track and cross country.
Wow. Yep, that's tough there, man.
You know, you get out
for the number one seed. For the number one seed.
This is the number one seed. And Coach Pettaway and Wheeler Brown from when he was coaching, no. When you get out of your normal routine, your normal sleeping pattern, and the fact that you have two teams who are from the Eastern time zone going to the Central time zone. Now, they have a little bit of a slight advantage because their body clocks will be an hour later, so it's really 10 o'clock on their body clock. But even still, how many times do you play baseball outside of when we got to get this game in because it's going to rain at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, at 9, 10 o'clock in the morning?
Right.
So the number one seed doesn't get a bye at all.
Nobody gets a bye.
No.
18, straight 18 bracket.
Right, but see, that I understand with it being 18, but that time, man, you punishing the number one seed.
Yes, traditionally they played at the last game of the tournament, right? When they had
right,
division.
and then when you advance, you didn't jump on. You normally would get the lower seeded.
Right, but the number 2 seed, Coach Pettaway, plays at 12 o'clock.
Right,
that's a traditional baseball time. And the other thing is, should the number 2 seed hold like they're supposed to, all their games through the first 3 rounds are at 12 o'clock. Versus the number 1 seed who plays game 1 at 9, and should they win, play game 2 at 3. So their body schedule is going all over the place with the routine.
Wow.
You know, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it makes me go, wow. Oh, wow. I think you're right. It's not bad if you're the second seed.
Exactly. Right. Obviously I'm a FAMU apologies, FAMU alum. I'm still gonna wear my green and my orange and green. You know, I'm not going to. I will have my other ways of protesting besides not supporting my student athletes.
My question would be whether or not the coaches raised any fuss about this. This can't be the first time that they are just looking at this.
And you're right, because this had to go through the coaches committee, get approved by the ADs committee. I'm assuming, I don't think this goes all the way up to the presidents, but I know this format, and you can correct me on this, Coach Pettaway and Coach Brown, usually doesn't this come from the coaches and the chair of the baseball committee to the athletic, to the coaches in general, and then the athletic directors?
Correct. You correct,
AD.
Yes. So somebody had to approve it.
I would like to understand better exactly what the rationale behind it is or was. And, whether or not, like I said, the coaches complained about it and what was the response from the ADs or what was the response from the commissioner's office or what have you.
That would be interesting. That would be interesting. Because I know sometimes you go behind closed doors and you kind of agree to disagree on issues, but then at the end of the day, you get together and say, well, this is for the good of the conference in this baseball tournament. I guess what I tell you what is going to make it even more exciting, AD. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that number 2 seed. The big question is, after the day, who what's the bold statement? Well, not a bold statement, but who's going to be the number 1 seed? You think? I say Bethune-Cookman.
I think Bethune. It's between Bethune-Cookman and Fab. Fab's going to win today. Does Bethune-Cookman defeat Texas Southern? I think Bethune-Cookman wants to go out and to beat Texas Southern, knowing that they will potentially have to play Texas Southern in round 1. They want to put the fear of God in them by taking 2 out of 3 in this series. So I'm thinking Bethune-Cookman is actually going to wind up getting that number 1 seed. which would make Florida A&M number 2, which makes a first-round matchup of Bethune and Texas Southern, FAMU and Southern, Alabama State, Jackson State would be matched up in round 1, and then Arkansas, Pine Bluff, and Grambling State. And I'm gonna be honest with you.
UAPB.
If I'm FAMU, I want to avoid UAPB and Grambling, which would be in the same bracket with Bethune.
Yep.
I can see that. Yeah, because FAMU 10-game winning streak, UAPB moving up and quiet. Well, I don't know if you can say quietly now, because they have done a good job over last month. So they're trending upward.
Yeah, we're gonna let our cousins over there on the beach take care of them. Yeah. I mean, once again, the way this is playing out, I'm thinking bracket 2 with bracket B with Florida A&M. Wait a minute, I lost my seeds, but Florida A&M, Southern, and let me take that back. FAMU and Arkansas, Pine Bluff, and Grambling are in the same bracket. So now, let me take that back. I need Bethune to lose. I don't want to see Grambling and Arkansas, Pine Bluff in the same bracket.
I know we kind of mentioned UAPB. Alabama State. Quietly kept nobody's talking about them. What do you think their chances of going far into the tournament?
The thing here, Carlos, these top 3 teams, despite their record, have been flawed over the last month. And those flaws come down to their pitching staff. And nothing against their pitching staff, but they've had injuries to their pitching staff, which has forced some things different in the rotation than you would have originally planned for. So with seeds 1, 2, and 3, it's going to come down to who is healthy with that pitching staff and how we're going to rotate that, go through your rotation. Because in theory, your Wednesday starter is going to be your championship game starter. But if you need him on that Saturday game, you're going to pitch. You're going to get a couple 3 innings out of him on that Saturday, which is going to be really fun. The biggest key is if one of these teams, whoever comes out this bracket, can avoid the game on Saturday.
And I also wonder which team has the most, how can I put it, that number 2 starter. Because, sometimes in the other conferences, if they think they have an advantage with pitching depth, they're probably
they throw you number 2 on day 1.
Yeah, but they probably, that's a big gamble, though.
That's what I love about this new SWAC. You really can't afford to do that.
Right.
If I'm Bethune, do I really want to throw my number 2 starter against Texas Southern? If I'm FAMU, do I really want to throw my number 2 against Southern's number 1? No. We got to go heads up. 1 for 1, 2 for 2, et cetera, all the way down till you get to your bullpen session.
Yeah, I guess I was just gambling there.
Yeah.
Thinking about that.
And the beautiful thing about these tournaments every year, and all you guys are baseball fans, there is somebody. There's one arm and there's one bat that we don't even know who on the roster we have never heard from that becomes the story and the hero of this SWAC tournament every year. Who would that be? And who would they play for?
Best pitching.
I didn't say the best pitcher coming in, but there's always a surprise pitcher. There's always somebody who the coach threw out there hoping to get 2 innings because this was going to be a bullpen game, and he goes 7 and strike out 9. There's always this guy who bats 7, 8, or 9 in the batting order, and when you look at the stats on Sunday, he's batting .542 in the tournament. Who is that going to be? this year, Carlos?
That's a good
Coach
question.
Pettaway, Wheeler.
That's
We
a good
shall see
question.
it. I plan to go down there and find out.
I'll be there too.
Well, for the record, because I still got even family members saying stay off of. I don't know how that got started. Stay off of Crenshaw, Coach Crenshaw. I didn't start that. I think I know who started on this show.
Free Crenshaw.
Yeah, nobody's gonna bother him.
Give him 2 more years, Carlos. Give him a couple more years.
Okay. Well, I'm not the AD. I'm not the AD. But what have you done for me lately? I know that's a big theme. Do we need to make a bold statement? Who wins it? Who wins the tournament? Just come out and give your thoughts. Who's going to win it? Coach Pettaway, give us a guess.
I got Bethune-Cookman.
Wheeler?
I got Bethune-Cookman.
Wait a minute. That's 2. Drew?
Fam, he going with them Rattlers. Strike, and strike again.
My sleeper, I'm going to say this. My sleeper is UAPB.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
I'm torn between Bethune-Cookman and now FAMU. 10-game winning streak. Wow. I guess I have to make a choice, huh?
Bethune, FAM, and Jackson all had double-digit win streaks throughout the regular season.
And boy, Jackson State, you seem like they should be in a higher place than they are.
Yeah, but they started so far down, Carlos. They took that baton and that ankle leg and that 4x4 just did good to get back into it. That's how their baseball season was.
Yeah, that's why you got to be consistent. And
yes,
a couple of teams that were the most consistent: FAMU, Bethune-Cookman, and now all of a sudden Alabama State and UAPB.
Yeah,
I'm gonna just go with Bethune-Cookman, but I wouldn't be surprised if FAMU wins it.
Yeah.
Dark horse, did we cover that? Who's the sleeper?
Yeah.
I said Pine Bluff.
Yep.
How about you, Wheeler?
Southern.
Yeah. Ooh.
Southern
had the return the killer.
And you, Drew.
Look, Bethune, FAMU, Alabama State would not surprise me any one of those 3 teams winning. So I have to go with Pine Bluff as my sleeper team.
Yep.
I guess I'll make it. Almost unanimous. Pine Bluff. For that part, SWAC baseball tournament coming up. Now, quickly, NBA updates. Coach Pettaway. Boston is out. Cleveland is out. OKC could be out. Hopefully not. Indiana and the Knicks in the East. Charles told me to give a message to Coach Graves. He wants to help him see him there in Boston. Well, no, he said see him there in
New York.
In New York for the finals.
Yeah.
But Coach Pettaway, it's been a really unique NBA playoffs.
Right. I think injuries has played a great part in it. And then, of course, you've had the great upsets. I think right now New York is playing as well as anybody. Anytime you can get 6 people in double digits, you had 4 guys that score over 20 points a game for them in that closeout game against Boston. So they're sitting pretty right now, but they're going to have their hands full against Indiana now. Indiana's a very balanced team, with Siakam and Halliburton. Those guys can play. They got a bench, so it's going to be a little bit more difficult for them. Then on the West, OKC, they got the opportunity. They blew it earlier in the series, but now they got Game 7 at home, so they got to come home with it. And of course, the other team is just waiting on them. They're resting. They're getting all their little nick injuries out of the way, and they're just sitting waiting on them. And it's going to be a great finals, both on the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference Finals.
Who's going to win the Eastern Conference Finals?
I have to go with New York right now. I have to go with New York. But no, my team originally now. Remember, I had Boston winning everything. I had Boston and OKC in the finals. I think in the East, I think the Knicks will win.
And speaking of that, AD and Wheeler, there was a good segment I saw. I think Bomani Jones, he brought up, of course, Tatum with Achilles injury. Whew, I know about that, but I didn't have mine's ruptured. Yeah, it's totally different. I had mine's cut to remove a bone spur. But with that being said, the conversation's been they hadn't seen so many young under 30 NBA athletes with Achilles, and the thought process was they started basketball playing it early, AAU games. There's not really a whole downtime because if you lose, all you're winning, you still back to the grind. So with that being said, I thought that was just an interesting conversation.
Can I put my 2 cents in on that?
Mm-hmm.
These kids don't take care of their feet. They don't like to get taped up. And Coach Pettaway you know what I'm talking about. Number one, they don't like to get taped up. Number two, they don't like to wear ankle braces. Number three, when they off the court, all they got on is slides. And number four, we grew up wearing high tops.
Mm-hmm.
They don't wear high tops anymore.
Nope.
So yeah, your Achilles is going to give. And speaking of somebody who's had Achilles surgery, that was some of the causes of mine because I stopped wearing shoes that had proper support on them. Lord Jesus, when last time you seen somebody under 30 in a pair of Hardballs?
I haven't. Speaking of feet,
and they don't wear hot top. They don't wear hot top.
So they don't take care. They don't take care of their lower body. We'll pump iron all day, but we're not doing the basic stuff that we have to do to take care of our body.
It's a thought, Wheeler. I can see Wheeler saying, "Well, I'm a hardliner," but but you got that's interesting. AD brings that up because that was
a highly neglected area. It's a highly neglected
things we're talking
area.
about.
I mean, but I think it's always been. Even back when we were playing, I mean, we had more high tops then, and we always gravitated toward the high tops. I don't know if fear of an ankle injury or what have you kind of drove it, but it just made it you felt more supportive overall. But like you said, these kids nowadays, I mean, it's fashionable. Low tops are fashionable.
Right.
And they're more about fashion and style than they are about practicality. So, it makes sense.
Yeah. Well, you got to take care of your feet and support. And that's one thing I don't mind paying. I haven't paid under $150 for a good pair of support tennis shoes that you wear and work in. So I know the value of that, but I'm not playing basketball now,
right.
But it was just interesting that was brought up. So OKC wins tonight.
Hey, Carlos.
Huh?
Yes.
We didn't have Achilles injury when we were wearing Chucks back in the day, did we?
Oh, Chuck Taylors, and we had all the different colors that you can wear. Yeah, that is true.
$9.99. I remember they was $9.99.
You was the bar when you had something besides the white, wasn't you, Wheeler?
Yes, indeed.
Something besides the white Chucks.
EA say pro kids for Carlos. Nah. But I did have a pair of the NBA tennis shoes. Remember the NBAs back in the day? Oh, wait a minute. You don't remember, Will? It was the NBAs and the Converse. But anyway. On that note, tonight, who wins? OKC or Denver?
Well, I think OKC is going to win it.
At home. OKC at home. Wheeler?
I'm going with Denver.
I knew you would. But I wouldn't be surprised, experience versus youth.
Yeah.
AD?
The worst thing that could happen is OKC and Indy in the NBA Finals for the NBA. They will go crazy with the ratings, talking about how bad the ratings are. So because of that, I am going with New York and Denver in the finals.
I'm going for what you just said. It was going to be not good. OKC and the Pacers. On that note, we appreciate AD coming on. We appreciate everybody sticking with us. We had a little extra, 19 minutes? Now it's
What's
time.
the announcement, Carlos? Don't forget the announcement.
Oh, the announcement. I'm in negotiations to change teams in the NBA, Coach Pettaway.
You are? Okay.
Carlos said hit the portal. As much as he done talked about those kids, now he done hit the fan portal.
I'll share this with you. OKC is really putting a lot of pressure on me. So, Pat Riley, he better come up with a plan.
Say
not
it
to
ain't
run
so,
it back.
Carlos. Say it ain't so. You're in the NIL bag, are you, Carlos?
Hey, well, that's not the most important thing to me, but Miami has to show me. Pat Riley.
Minnesota say they looking for a few good men.
Yeah.
Well, at the least, I understand that. At the least, Miami and OKC may be 1-A, Coach Pettaway. We'll see. But I still love my Heat.
I got you.
On that note, we'll see you next Saturday at 11 a.m. for another edition of the Carlos Brown Show right here on the Black College Sports Network. And to the rumors that Charles is negotiating a tougher contract, no, he'll be back next week. Until then, peace and God bless.
No Charles Chop, but you got that Rattler strike. How about that?
We'll do this for Charles.
Charles, that's for you.